Oscar, hurry! We gotta beat that wall!
Hello, my Legionnaire. Today we do battle against a most fearsome opponent. But first, let me give you a little background knowledge before we jump into the fray. The Gears of War franchise has been a staple of Microsoft's first-party lineup for a decade now, and 2.5 years later, after the last installment, it makes its gruesome return. Is it worth another trip to the world of Sera to fight this new threat, or is it better off left dead and buried? Well, I'll tell you with a brief plot synopsis, the good and the not so good. Also, this review is as spoiler-free as I can make it. Let's go! It's been 25 years since the Locust and Lambent were wiped out by Marcus Phoenix and the rest of Delta Squad. The world of Sera and its inhabitants know a peace that they had long since forgotten. However, there is still tension between those who remain loyal to the Coalition of Ordered Governments, or COG for short, and those who choose to live in isolated settlements, aka outsiders. To enforce its will, the COG uses robots and automated defenses to keep its civilians safe and prevent the outsiders from raiding government settlements. During this journey, we follow JD, the son of the war hero Marcus Phoenix, Del, JD's best friend, and Kate, the daughter of an outsider leader. Although their alliances to either the COG or outsiders seems somewhat trivial, Del and JD were former COG recruits who have since left the army and fallen in with Kate. A standard raiding mission of a COG base draws the ire of First Minister Jin, which causes our little band of misfits to be deemed enemies of the state. To add on to that, soldiers and citizens of the COG have been disappearing, leading to even more distrust between both groups. A three-way war between our heroes, the COG, and this new monstrous force known as the Swarm flesh out the entirety of the campaign. Along with a roughly 6 to 8 hour story, depending on the difficulty you choose, Gears 4 comes with standard multiplayer modes such as Team Deathmatch and King of the Hill, but also includes some new ones like Arms Race, where both teams start off with the same weapon, and once they get 3 kills as a group, they get a new one. I'd be remiss not to mention the return of the Horde mode, but I'll get to that soon enough. Let's start off with what makes this game great, and there is a ton, beginning with the campaign. Firstly, it does an excellent job of providing backstory and context to those unfamiliar with the Gears of War mythos. The prologue takes you back to before the emergence of the Locust threat, during E-Day or when they first arrived, and a glorious last stand right before they're all wiped out. It also serves as a nod to the fans who always crave more information about the conflicts that surrounded the world of Sera before crazy monsters sprang out of the ground. The campaign in general feels just long enough, and although it does have its bombastic moments, it tells a smaller and darker tale, which I think is a good place for our new heroes to get their feet wet. On a technical level, Gears of War 4 is a true marvel. As someone who has played through all the other Gears games, never have I stopped and just stared at some of the beautiful landscapes, skies, and structures I would normally not even give a second thought to. The attention to detail and how the leaves rustle in the wind, or how the moonlight streaks through the dusty air is awe-inspiring. On top of that, the set pieces in this game had me screaming in happiness and horror in a way that something like the Uncharted franchise has in years past. Here is one such instance where there's just so much going on visually that it's overwhelming in the absolute best way possible. Although these moments seem daunting at first, Gears does an excellent job of relaying pertinent information to you during these sequences, so you don't become frustrated. The stable Gears of War cover-based shooting returns and is still the best in the business. There's a feeling of weightiness that no game has yet to match. Roadie running and vaulting takes a little getting used to when used in tandem, but after a little practice, it feels much more natural. One thing that I've been wanting for years is the use of knives. Now, this may seem trivial, but the soldiers always carried them and never used them. Now, they make their glorious debut. Remember how I was just discussing running and then vaulting over cover fluidly? Well, if there is an enemy on the other side, you set them up for a brutal knife execution. The same can now be done by being able to reach over cover to pull an enemy in for a kill with a more personal touch. These mechanics are not one-sided, however. A vault kick can be nullified by an enemy on the other side of cover, or outright avoided if they reach over and you move out of the way. Truly, this adds another little layer onto the best cover mechanics in gaming. Now, let's dig into the multiplayer. Like the campaign, it's all about teamwork. Each mode is pretty much standard Gears fare with shotgun-dominated team deathmatches and whatnot. I'm typically not a huge fan of Gears multiplayer, but I'm happy to report that it plays very, very well and runs smoothly. Finally, let's talk about Horde mode. Fixture of the series since Gears of War 2, and they have added layer upon layer since then. For those who might be unaware, Horde mode pits you and up to 4 teammates against 50 waves of stronger and stronger enemies. Static base building and fortifications were added in Gears of War 3, but now you have the option of building anywhere you choose. This doesn't only provide different tactical advantages, but makes each match feel unique. Killing enemies affords your team energy, the currency in Horde mode, that can be used to purchase new defenses or repair damaged ones. Besides being able to build anywhere and obtain energy from your fallen foes, Gears of War 4's Horde Mode 3.0 adds a class system on top of that. It breaks down like this. Classes come in 5 flavors. Engineers, who are the best base/fortification builders and maintainers. Soldiers function as a good all-around class focusing on rifles and cover-based fighting. Heavies prefer turrets and explosive armaments. Scouts allow your team to obtain more energy for your team and its defenses. And snipers, well, snipe, and pick off high-value targets. Although gaining currency is nothing new and exciting in Horde mode, the new dynamics that can be found in crafting the right group is. Each class also comes with specific skill cards used to boost certain attributes. This allows for a deeper layer of customization unknown to Gears before this point. The last thing I want to praise is about the character of Marcus Phoenix. He really steals the show from all the other characters. He's serious, lethal, and sometimes even comedic. I really enjoyed seeing him come back, but I hope that he gets to retire soon. He's been through enough. Now, no game is without its flaws. First off, I think both groups of enemies fall a bit short. While I do appreciate the design of the new swarm enemies, most of them felt less interesting than their previous Locust counterparts. The robots, on the other hand, feel stale and altogether pointless. The Gears franchise has always pitted you against disgusting creatures that were intelligent and ruthless. I do appreciate adding a different enemy type to the mix, but the robot faction feels out of place within the universe. It is especially grating when you see both of these factions attack you together in Horde mode. It just doesn't make sense. Another point I want to make about most enemies is that they all feel a little bit like bullet sponges. These guys can take incredible amounts of damage before falling. While the game tries to explain why that is, it sometimes feels as if you could shoot a Scion in the face for days before it finally succumbs to your onslaught. Switching focus to our heroes, I feel that they come off not necessarily poorly, but rather bland, mostly in the case of the lead protagonist, JD. It might be unfair to compare him to Marcus Phoenix, but JD is so boring and lacks any real strong personality traits. This makes it very hard to feel for him during any events of the game. Del and Kate aren't as bad. With Del, he seems like an amalgamation of Dom and Baird from the previous games, filling the right-hand man archetype whilst also being tech-savvy and witty. Kate is probably the most compelling of the new recruits, and I'm excited to see where her character goes. The last detractor from the game is sadly in the case of the weapons. Now, that isn't to say that there isn't a significant arsenal to choose from, but it feels a little slim by comparison to previous games. An argument for why they left out certain weapons like the Digger Launcher and Scorcher could be made in a lore sense, but these armaments are representatives of enemies' cultures. The robot guns are pretty effective, but unimaginative, and the Swarm mostly carries remnants from the Locust. Although the Dropshot and Buzzkill are interesting by design, they feel more like iterations on previous weapons, as opposed to meaningful new additions. Gears of War 4 is a true return to form for the franchise. The firefights are superb, the physics and lighting are the best they've ever been, and the story does a good job of slowly reintroducing the planet of Sera and all its struggles. Besides a somewhat lackluster group of heroes and a mixed bag of enemies, Gears 4 off-puts all of that with great co-op action, insane set pieces, and addicting gameplay that will be the envy of many. Do you agree with my review, Soldier? Let me know in the comments below. Also, be sure to like/subscribe to become a Legionnaire today. If you really want to help us out, share the review with a friend. This battle was truly a pleasure, and if you enjoyed it, drop by the General's tent to hear Joe and I discuss the game in its entirety during our weekly podcast. Thank you, and I'll see you on the battlefield. One last thing I wanted to mention, a little bonus bit here for you guys. This guy right here, they call him Ugly. He is excellent. Just look at him. He's like this horse, moose, deer. I don't know. I love him. He's the best. Look how stoic he is in the middle of this wind flare. Truly great.